I was supposed to be sitting here with my colleague Marek, but he couldn't make it in the end. So on Sunday evening, I made some changes. So I kept our common title, but I crossed it out playfully, so that you can see how far I shifted. But I still will try to touch the topics that we agreed on. But now it is my presentation, which I actually did for also myself to remind myself that there were times the theater, or there still are times that Slovak theater spoke and speaks freely, and it really actually has a lot of power in our society. And I have to move this myself. Very briefly, our history, because I think you need to know where we come from as a nation, because we are very, very young. The theater is very young, our republic is very young, because until 1918, we were a part of Austro-Hungarian Empire. Imagine this, it's just 100 years ago, it's not that far. So the forming of our nation is really still a short process for us. In 1918, we started the first Czechoslovak Republic, which lasted until 1938. And you see what happened in Slovak theater. The idea of Slovak theater didn't come from the people. It was the idea of the government, because the Czechs had their own national theater, so also we had to have one. So what we did is that we invited Czech theater company with Czech directors and Czech actors, and they, as the first Slovak professional premiere, they performed Czech play directed by Czech directors. So it's completely absurd, actually. But they did a lot for us professionally, and we learned a lot from them. So I don't want to be sarcastic. It was a good thing that this happened. But what happened in 1932, we felt the pressure of Hitler and the Germany to become more nationalistic. So in the Slovak National Theatre, there were two departments, Slovak department and Czech department, and which was actually also a good thing that we were suddenly on our own forming the Slovak theatre in Slovak language. But first there were no actors, they had to go to study to Prague, and actually there were these calls, people were walking around Slovakia asking people, please come to the Slovak National Theatre and become an actor, but it was really a hard job to do, because the word actor or actress had very negative connotations, because until the 1920 we had only amateur theatre, and the word actor actually was perceived as something ridiculous, as a circus player, or so it was very negative. So the starts were not very easy, the beginnings. In 1938, it was a paradox that the Second World War was a time for experiment for us, because we became so-called Slovak state. We sent the Czechs and also all the Jews away, and became the nation on our own. And yet the theater, paradoxically, found the time to experiment, to use avant-garde artistically, visually, or also in concepts and ideas. So suddenly in 20 years we managed to catch up to the rest of the Europe. What happened later in the 50s was that people were really disappointed, because the West failed us. We were left on our own during the Second World War. We didn't understand capitalism, and it was very easy to somehow sleep under the auspices or the protection of the Great Russia. This somehow a peaceful time at the beginning, because it all looked very promising in the 1948. This peaceful start included the new theatre law, where censorship became official. And the document that you see on the right side actually says that each play had to be controlled at the premiere or a few days before the premiere, and it had to fulfill 20 points, including the point how this play contributes to building socialism, and who is the hero and who is the negative capitalistic hero, and so on. The theater in the 50s became a strong tool of propaganda because it reached a lot of people. And there was a strong dictatorship in repertory, like you had to have one classical play, but in socialistic manner, social realism manner. You had to have a Slovak classical play and contemporary Slovak play, but everything in this social realism. And then, of course, plays of befriended socialist countries that also included Croatia, Ukraine, Bulgaria, you name it, we had it. As the theater reached the masses, it was also a good thing in the 50s because until then, it was only the Slovak National Theater in Bratislava. But in the 50s, there were new buildings of theater built around Slovakia. And actually, they are still working now. It's like 8 or 9 buildings. So there was created a network of theaters. After Stalin's death, there was something we called Golden Age of Slovak theater, where the Western playwright eventually became the part of our repertory. People returned to theaters because in the 50s what happened was that people were tired of seeing on stage something that wasn't part of their real lives. So people stopped going to theater, and we call it audience crisis, but it was generally the crisis of topics and of the theater itself. So this was a very prosperous time for us, and actually we eventually had in repertory things like Sartre, as you can see, and some very experimental for us visual performances. In 1968, when the Russian troops came, the theater returned to 50s again. The performance of Beckett that you see, that was made in Korzo Theater, and this theater became a legend because it was full of young creators. They had their own critical view on the world, and it was shut down after 3 seasons in 1971. Some actors disappeared, basically. Some were dissolved in other theaters. Some directors from the theater couldn't direct for a few years. They were sent to direct in television and so on. And a lot of them were, for the next 20 years, followed by and reported to the state police. In the 80s, the situation got a little bit better because the theater makers learned how to tell their opinion in between the lines, and theater gained strong political power. It was a strong voice of the Velvet Revolution. But until the Velvet Revolution, there was this crisis again because we lost the topics. We didn't know what and how to talk to people, but because the theater it didn't have to be political anymore. The situation got better in the new millennium with a lot of projects supporting contemporary drama, including our festival in the Theatre Institute that will have the 20th edition next year. It's called Nová drama, New Drama, and I think that was one of projects that really supported young playwrights and young directors to think of the theater in new ways, to try to work with in-your-face theater and in multimedia and so on. And so now the topics of contemporary Slovak theater. We have to somehow to become a real nation, to identify ourselves as Slovaks, we have to deal with the past and with personalities that formed us as a nation. So Tiso, Josef Tiso, was our president during the Slovak state during the Second World War. And this performance, it was a monodrama, was very important because this Catholic priest president voluntarily sent Jews to camps. I would like to quote, just to give you the idea, because the President Tiso still has some supporters, even now, who confirm his position as a regular personality of our Slovak history. That's why this performance was so important. So I quote what President said in 1942. People ask whether what is being done with the Jews is Christian. I'm reminding you, it was a Catholic priest. Is it human? Is it not robbery? I ask, is it Christian when the nation wants to free itself from its eternal enemy, the Jew? Love of self is a command from God, and this love of self commands me to remove everything that damages me or that threatens my life. I don't think I need to convince anyone that the Jewish element threatened the lives of Slovaks. It would have looked even worse if we hadn't pulled ourselves together in time, if we hadn't purged them from us. And we did so according to divine command. Slovak, cast off your parasite. So that's why the performance, with this quotation, of course, was very important in the history of Slovak theater. The actor died already, but now it is being refreshed by his son. And I proudly present to you the first Slovak contemporary female director who did a performance about the real first Slovak female director, MHL, that's a shortcut for Magda Husáková Lokvencová, which was actually person not so known as a female director, but as a first wife of later Slovak president Gustav Husák. So actually she didn't have enough power to speak as a director because she was a former wife of a president. And I would like really you to notice the name of Slava Daubnerová because she's actually one of few Slovaks that made it abroad. She directed in Prague Opera, German Opera, and a few weeks ago actually, she had a premiere in Stockholm's King Opera, Melancholy according to Lars von Trier's movie. So, and it's herself because she started as a performer and a director of herself. Very, very interesting personality, really. And the other director is Rastislav Balek, who really tries to identify Slovak history and Slovak personalities, but I will tell you later. This is first Slovak independent, really independent NGO theater. Stoka, it means a channel that actually, like everything that comes from drainage and from toilets down under the floor, that's Stoka theater. And the director and founder Blaho Uhlar founded this theater in the 1990s, and it's the first and actually the only devised or collective theater in Slovakia, and he still, after 30 years, he still continues to work in this method, like they improvise and then they fix it on paper and the final shape is fixed. But why am I showing you? Because it somehow represents also the state of independent theaters. Because that was the building that you cannot find anymore because it was replaced of the building you see below. There is a blue fence behind this big shopping center So the blue fence and the trees are still there, but the theater is not there anymore. They pulled it down because they wanted to build this shopping center at the Danube in Bratislava. So this Stoka theater moved to another place. It was a former sewing factory, really nice and old building. And they tore it down again like 3 years ago. So now he is in the building of IMCA in the middle of the city, and we all hope that he will stay there. The director is 70 now, and he's kind of a legend, but nobody from the government respects this legend. So back to Rastislav Balek, the director, and his signature actor Robert Roth. I put there a movie, Polish fairy tale for you, for you too. Maybe you can Google it. That he acted in one of your fairy tales here. This director Rastislav Balek, he really tries to define who we are and to find. He says he tries to find our king, because there is no king for a Slovak nation, because we never had a king. And why this performance was very important in the 2009 and next year. It talked about the personality of Jan Holy, again a Catholic priest, just to follow, who was the only person who wrote in the first Slovak language that lasted only 15 years at the beginning of the 50 years at the beginning of the 19th century. It was based on kind of a Czech slang. This priest lived in very poor conditions at the village at the western part of Slovakia. He had many diseases. He got blind in the end, and he wrote many expert studies about language, about education, and he also wrote an epic about the first so-called Slovak king Svetopluk. So that's the kind of contradiction of somebody who tries to educate people and lives in very bad conditions. And it somehow repeats, this kind of history repeats itself in Slovakia. Rastislav Balek continued digging in the past and there with other historical figures who could be perceived as our kings or princes or counts. And here he imagines the offspring of such kings as basically a Gastarbeiter or an Erasmus student. So that's who we are, who come from such kings who define our nation. We are the boy in the front covered in blood, who is also in the back at the screen. That's us, the offspring who we actually leave our country. We do not want to stay there anymore, and we just move away to do whatever is available. This is a very fresh production of another Searching for a King in Slovakia, and this was actually closed after 9 runs because the director of the theater decided that he can't sell it to the public, that it's not interesting enough. And this was made as a kind of detective story. And it was made of free text, expert study, a new play, and it was a kind of metaphorical way of trying to find, again, who are we, who is our king, and who identifies us. And this performance, again directed by Rastislav Balek, caused a riot last February in Slovak National Theatre. The writer, Jan Chalupka, the writer of the original play, was this time not Catholic but evangelic priest, pastor. which allowed him to get married. That's the difference. And when he wrote the original play, he was inspired by German Kotzebue, Czech Klitsbera, and Hungarian Kisfaludi, who all had their own villages of kind of stupid, dumb people. So Chalupka created our own village or a little city called Kocúrkovo. And the word became legendary. Actually, it became a part of Slovak dictionary, like when you talk about something that is really messy and they're absurd and there are no rules, like everybody does what they want. So that's Kocúrkovo, and that's actually expression of our country now, right now. This performance caused a riot because this play, Kocúrkovo, is a part of our schools. The children study it, but I am sure nobody reads it because it was written in so-called Slovakized Czech, including Hungarian references, German and Latin references. So it's very complicated text to read. But people go to the theater saying, oh, we know what this is. It's like you go to see Hamlet. It is a part of your intellectual equipment. So they go to see Kocúrkovo, and they leave after 20, after 100 minutes, after 40 minutes, because they are really unhappy of what they see, because this performance really represents our country right now. The basic plot of the story is that a shoemaker has a daughter and he wants her to marry a new teacher who comes to town. And in original play, the new teacher falls in love with daughter of former teacher, and they get married, and it's this idealistic ending. But in this new interpretation, the bride, it's the only girl there. In this new interpretation, the teacher doesn't find anymore in Slovakia this female ideal, this idol. It's the man on the right and with the violin there. So he gets mad and he just leaves the stage in this coat because he can't fulfill his ideas about the future of Slovak Republic. And it all turns into the story of a bride who first, at this picture, it's a lazy girl who doesn't want to do anything, but then she gets very ready to become married to someone who will give her a new perspective of life. But her idol leaves, mad, crazy, and she becomes a representative of our country as an angel full of ideas and ready to protect us. She, in the end, becomes this gray old spinster, lonely lady, waiting for someone to save her. So it's actually a very, very sad picture, and it somehow anticipates what could happen with our country. And actually the play also deals with the election, so it all fits like this now. This year we had the 30th anniversary of independent Slovak Republic, and Kocúrkovo was also a contribution, very sad contribution to this anniversary, and these two performances dealt with the split of Czech and Slovak Republic. The one on the left, Pomočka, hyphen, it's actually the little mark between Czechoslovak Republic, which wasn't there, but in the 19th there was a conflict that it should be there, and which word should be first, Czech or Slovak Republic, Czechoslovakia, Slovak Czech Republic, who knows? It talked about a man. It was based on documentary materials, this performance, hyphen, and on expert studies, on newspaper articles, and it talked about a man nobody knew about, that he actually lived, and he set himself on fire and left a message that we shouldn't split the countries. So it was a very, very interesting political act back then. But generally, it's kind of a sci-fi production. And the second one, the puppet theater, was a very, I have to say, very funny performance that deals with stereotypes of Czechs and Slovaks, because Zbojník, as a Slovak robber, representative of Slovak culture, is a robber, or Slovak nation, and Gašpar Kor, clown, representative of Czech Republic. They meet together and they talk about our stereotypes. And the second layer was the conflict between the actors playing the puppet theater, who also got into the conflict, and the ending of the performance actually is very sad, because they cut the scene in thirds, not in half, in thirds, because the 2/3 go to Czech Republic and 1/3 goes to Slovak Republic, and they split everything in thirds. So that's the contributions to our anniversary of 30th anniversary of independent Slovak Republic. As I was supposed to talk about the war a little, this is a performance called 24. That's the date when the war started, and that's a contribution of the actors of Slovak National Theatre, who made a play from newspaper articles. So actually the experience is still second-hand. It's not authentic of what happened in Ukraine. But what was really valuable here is that each of the actors had their own monologue of how they see either the war or something very personal, like COVID times or burning out. So in this way it was very valuable. The second contribution to the war was inviting Ukrainian director Oleg Liptsin, and the premiere was just a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, who directed Gogol's short story about two neighbors who got in a very stupid fight, which ended, actually his interpretation was that it ended with war. I will skip the next one, and the last one. This is something I really would like to share about, because it kind of represents my country. This is called D1. D1 is the name of a highway that should connect Bratislava and Košice, west and east. The building started in 1998, when our Prime Minister Vladimír Mečiar invited Klaudia Schiffer to cut the ribbon, like the building starts. As you see, Klaudia Schiffer is the puppet. It's aged Klaudia Schiffer overlooking the process of building the highway, because the highway is still not ready. But that's why it's called Myth About the Highway. And it's a very good text. It's something like a combination of this German plays from Elfriede Jelinek or Thomas Bernhard, maybe Marina Carr a little. So it flows. It's very informative, very precise, and yet kind of poetic. And what the actors do, apart from the monologues, is that they build or they prepare letters from concrete. They do it on stage. So they just, as this O letter, they hang it. If it breaks, they go and prepare another one. So they work on the highway, and in the end, what they built is a sign that says, "The performance will be ready in," and there is no year, because the highway is still not ready. So I think this is very political, political statement, but actually it had no influence. Like, we all laughed, because yeah, that's how we live, but nobody noticed. And actually today is the last day they will perform this show. And this is my last contribution from the D1 performance. And this somehow represents what is awaiting us, because our new Minister of Culture said that we have to focus on our own culture. There is actually one culture in our country, and we shouldn't mix it with anything else. There is no 2, 3, 4. There is only one, and we should focus on that. So we expect that we will have to do a lot of ethnological research and folklore and dancing in original Slovak dresses, and who knows. Thank you for your attention.